Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to Author Stories. We've got a fantastic show for you today. This one is a little bit different. It is with David Handler, who is kind of a writing hero of mine. But as a bunch of you know, we recently moved to a new house, and we recorded this show in the middle of our move, and we did not have internet access yet. And David so graciously agreed to record over the phone with me, and we're talking old school technology. So I was on my phone, he was on his, and that's why the audio is kind of compressed, and it sounds like two guys talking on the phone to one another. And but don't let that get you down, because the content is absolutely fascinating. David is an amazing writer. He has brought back his Stewart Hoag Mystery Series that I'm a huge fan of, and they're just fantastic. And there's a lot in this show about writing, about publishing, just really great content. So please endure the kind of high compression and sounding like we're on the phone, because that's what we were, and really enjoy the show. I'd also like to thank our sponsors real quick, the AIPP. You can find them at AIPPonline.org/members. And you can assemble your publishing team from there. Look for people to help you with every stage of the publishing process. AIPPonline.org/members. Also, thank you to Jonathan Yanez and J.R. Castle for their Gateway to the Galaxy series and Nick Breaker's Essence series. Pick those up today. There's links to them in the show notes. You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is David Handler. Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today I'm super excited to have David Handler on the show with me. David has an amazing new book called The Man Who Couldn't Miss. It's the latest in the Stewart Hoag Mystery Series, or Hoagy, as we like to call him. Welcome to the show, David.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. We begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
I would say when I was 10 years old, I broke my leg ice skating, and I was in a big hip cast and for like 2 or 3 months, and in bed, and my mom brought me all kinds of books from the library, and Pretty Boys and sports biographies, and she brought me a collection of Sherlock Holmes stories, and I read a story called The Red-Headed League. I don't know if you remember that story. It's about the pawnbroker.
I don't
you remember the Red-Headed League? Anyway, it's about a pawnbroker who is invited to join this thoroughly ridiculous-sounding organization that will pay him a lot of money to sit in a room and copy the Encyclopedia Britannica every day for 8 hours and get paid a lot of money. The reason that they're doing it is that they're tunneling from the basement of his pawn shop to the bank across the street and robbing the bank. And it was my first introduction to the idea of misdirection, and I was thoroughly entranced. It was just thoroughly entranced. I must have read that story 3 times in a row. I'd already, been a Hardy Boys fan, but it never had occurred to me that I would wanna, someday write. I actually began my career as a journalist, sort of by accident. When I was 15, I was a sophomore in high school. I needed a fifth period elective, and the choices were the school newspaper and auto shop. So I picked the school newspaper, and I wandered in, and it turned out that I had a gift for writing, which I didn't know, and I was, not a gifted athlete. I was not a gifted musician. It was actually the first thing in my whole life, all 15 years of it, that I discovered I was actually good at. And when I did it, people responded favorably to it, particularly when the faculty sponsor let me write humorous feature stories.
Right.
And people thought I was really funny. And so when I went off to college, and decided that I was going to be Ernest Hemingway. I would support myself as a journalist and become a novelist. I grew up in L.A., went to UC Santa Barbara, and then I got into the Graduate School of Journalism at Columbia in New York, moved to New York, and got a master's in journalism, and I spent from my middle 20s, 24 to 28, I was New York cultural correspondent for the Scripps Howard News Service, which meant I was their Broadway critic. I went to the theater 200 nights a year, which was like a dream job for, a kid from LA who loves the theater.
Sure.
And I also interviewed celebrities. I have to tell you, I looked like I was about 14. I mean, I was still getting carded in bars when I was 35, but I also interviewed amazing people. I interviewed John Huston, Elia Kazan, all kinds of amazing people who had written celebrity memoirs, their life stories or autobiographies or whatever. And all along, I was, working on a novel. I fell into the television business sort of by accident through a friend, and started writing TV sitcoms when I was like 26. I was a member of the original staff that created Kate and Allie with Jane Curtin and Susan St. James. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Series. Yeah, I was on that show, and I worked in TV. All the while I'm doing that, I'm working for a couple of magazines, working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I'm getting up every day at 5 a.m., wrapping myself in a blanket and working on my first novel. And, I ended up publishing my first novel when I was about 34. It was an autobiographical novel, not a murder mystery. It was kind of a traditional coming-of-age novel. At that point in my life, I thought I was going to be the next Philip Roth, I would say. It was called Kiddo, and it got fabulous reviews. It was featured in the New York Sunday Times book review. They ran my picture. They ran an excerpt of the book. And then the next week, I realized, okay, after all of that, life goes on. What are you going to do now?
Right.
My idea for my second book was I had been reading a lot of crime fiction over the past few years, partly because I lived right down the street from one of the most famous mystery bookstores in New York, Murder Inc., and I used to stop by there on my way home from the subway and pick up, Elmore Leonard and Donald Westlake and people like that, and that's what I was reading, and I was kind of thinking, I'd really like to write a novel about a ghostwriting experience I had when I was a journalist. I ghosted a best-selling memoir in the early 80s. And so I went to work on that, and I came up with the idea of a guy like me who was just bigger. He was hugely successful. The Toast of the Town, his novel, Hoagy was proclaimed the first major new literary voice of the 1980s. He was, this tall, dashing, handsome guy. He married a movie star. They got a fabulous apartment on Central Park West. They got an antique Jaguar XK150. That's the hound, Lulu. And he was, the toast of the town, the guy. And then he basically crashed and burned. He got writer's block. He developed a little too much affection for nose candy and had a major cocaine problem. And after a couple of years, his wife, Merilee Nash, divorced him. And when we meet up with Hoagy, he is back in his crummy fifth floor walk-up on West 93rd Street, right back where he started. He's got like $57 in the bank. He's got Lulu. He has no idea for a second novel. He's, basically on his ass. And his agent calls and says, I have a job for you, a possible job, ghosting a memoir. I said, I never will stoop to becoming a ghostwriter. Never, ever. And she said, listen, you're broke. You need to work. Do this. Take this interview for me. It's this really famous comic from the 1950s who broke up with his partner, kind of like a Martin and Lewis or Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
The book is called The Man Who Died Laughing. And he's gone through like 40 writers. He can't get along with anyone. You are such an obnoxious egomaniac. Something tells me that the two of you are going to hit it off. And so he ends up taking a job, flying out to L.A., and it's all about, this experience. And I finished the book, and my agent, who was a legendary agent at the time, Roberta Pryor, she was the Peter Benchley's agent on Jaws. She showed it was turned down by 24 houses, and the only editor who liked it was a young mystery editor named Kate Misiak at Bantam Books. She said, I love the humor, I love Hoagy's voice, I love Hoagy, I really love Lulu. Everything about this is great. The problem is that there just isn't enough here for it to be a crime novel. It needs a lot more jeopardy and danger and suspense and edge of the seat kind of stuff. And so I reluctantly have to reject it. And I can't remember the last time I felt so bad about rejecting the book. But she's the only one who wrote anything even remotely positive. So I called Roberta and said, do you think that she would meet with me for like half an hour in her office? And this is one of the advantages of living in New York and also having no shame.
Right.
And Roberta said, can't hurt to ask. So she called, and Kate said, yeah, I'll meet with him. Why not? And so I went up to her office, and I walked in the door, and she said, my God, you're 20 years old. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm actually 35. So we sat down. I said, listen, I've been a professional writer. I've been supporting myself as a professional writer. I've published a novel. I can, take apart and put back together again a sitcom script blindfolded in 30 seconds. I can do what you want me to do. Just tell me what you want me to do. What's missing? Where does it need to go? Just give me some guidance, and I'll do it. And so she was kind enough, generous enough to say, okay, here you need this, here you need that. And I said, okay, you're going to get this book back in 6 months. And she said, sure. And I sent it back to her in 6 months, and she bought it. And it was nominated for an Anthony Award. And from that point on, the third one, Man Who Would Be F. Scott Fitzgerald, won an Edgar Award. And from that point on, it turned out that I was a mystery writer, which I really, looking back, my passion for Sherlock Holmes and the Hardy Boys and stuff, I should have had an inkling, but I actually thought I was going to be a quote-unquote literary writer, and indeed my first novel was a literary novel, but I've now published 27 novels, and, they're all mystery, crime novels of one kind or another,
Well, and the Hoagy series specifically is not only they are not only mysteries, but mysteries with a lot of wit and humor, and your characters are in peril one minute, the next minute that you have me smiling and going along for the ride. As that kid who realized in high school that getting a laugh could really open doors for you, and as that same kid,
it's in my DNA. I am actually incapable of writing it. I have to actually take jokes out, especially when I was first starting, because I was still writing sitcoms and I was used to there had to be 5 jokes on a page, and I had to start cutting back, a little bit, because I was making it too funny almost, because murder, as you know, is not really very funny. And I don't write. I'm kind of a weird hybrid, because I don't write spoofs or humor novels. The Hoagy novels, as well as my Burger Mystery novels, are very, what I would call, serious character novels. The characters are very adult and fleshed out and complex. It's just that my observations and my dialogue have a tendency to be funny, because that's just who I am. So they're kind of a mix. I don't think there's anybody else quite like me out there. When I was doing the original 8 Hoagies from 1988 to 1997, I was actually working with actors, working with studio people, and so I was kind of like a spy inside the business, and so I was able to do, when I was doing I did a Hollywood novel, I did a sitcom novel. I really was, I had Hoagy and The Man Who Canceled Himself. I had Hoagy go sort of undercover on the show as a feeling specialist on the writing staff, and I was able to, kind of tell every story I ever wanted to tell about every horrible actor I'd ever worked with, and do terrible things to them. It's a very satisfying way to make a living. No road rage here. But what happened was with the Hoagy series was in about 1997. Was the last of the original 8. The Man Who Loved Women to Death, and at that point, I had a really strong gut feeling that the technology around us had changed so dramatically in the last 5 years that the series was no longer really contemporary or viable. When I started it, there was no email, there was no internet, there were no cell phones, so celebrity secrets were big secrets, and memoirs about, why did so-and-so break up with so-and-so, or who's seeing so-and-so. I mean, those secrets are really well guarded. I mean, don't forget that a huge swath of America was shocked to find out that Rock Hudson was gay,
Right. Now with TMZ, there are no secrets.
Something like that is impossible now, It's
right.
Impossible to imagine. Because we have, viral videos, camera phones, there are no secrets.
Right.
And I was really conscious of it the year before, 1996, during the O.J. Simpson trial, which took place in where he lived was like this one street over from where I grew up. When the white Bronco was going on Sunset Boulevard, and he's going to my parents' house.
Wow.
But we watched in real time on live TV a murder investigation and a murder trial, and I remember having a long conversation with an author friend of mine, a neighbor out here, a wonderful fellow named Dominic Dunn, who passed away a few years ago, and he covered the trial and for Vanity Fair and for CBS, and he said, "This is the end. There will be no great book written about the O.J. case, there will be no helter-skelter, there will be no in cold blood, because the audience has already seen it and lived it in real time because of CNN. One story, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop, you know.
Right.
And that was a real eye-opener for me. So I decided to you know, he was already, you know, kind of a troglodyte. He was still using a manual typewriter. He wouldn't use a fax machine, you know, and he just was not, you know, transferable to the modern age at all, I didn't think, personality-wise. And I also didn't think that the idea worked anymore. His time was over, you know. So I ended it, and I did a thriller. I did a couple of movies. I learned how to write short stories. I published my first short story in Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine when I was 48. I was very proud of myself. I discovered that I used to tell people I don't have time to write short stories, and the truth was I didn't know how to. They're a lot harder to write than people realize.
Oh, yeah.
They're really hard to write. I've written about 10 or 12 of them now, when I finish the book I'm working on, I'm going to write a biblio mystery short story for Otto Penzler for his Mysterious Press, which I'm really flattered to have been invited to do. Anyway, I did another series that takes place in the little New Englandy historic village on the Connecticut shoreline that I live in. The Burger Mystery Series. I wrote 11 of those, and the lead character, big surprise, is a critic, a movie critic. I'm like Turner Classic, you know, like fanatic. He comes out here and finds a dead body in his, you know, vegetable patch, and he's this chubby Jewish guy from New York, and the investigating officer is a really tall, stiff, starchy, black homicide investigator, a woman, a graduate from West Point, who has no visible sense of humor whatsoever. And she walks into the room, and the two of them start talking, and I kind of went, oh my God, I'm writing a love story. I had no idea. And so it's over the course of 11 books, I have explored the inner workings of this little town, which to me, I feel like a foreign correspondent living in a village who's been asked to file one story a year that's 300 pages long and somebody dies in it, you know. Because I've only lived in New York and LA. I've never lived in a small village like this where there's like 7,000 people. Everybody's related to everybody else. You go to the cemetery and you say the same names of people that still live here in town, and the gravestones are like 300 years old. You know? I mean, I'm from LA. There's nothing more than 10 years old there. You know, it's just it was, you know, a fabulous experience, and I was, you know, really enjoying working on it. And one day, 3 years ago, Dan Mallory, was executive editor of William Morrow, was having lunch with my literary agent, Dominic Abel. Dominic represents a very, very small, elite group of really top-flight mystery writers, and then he also represents me. Dan said to him, I got to tell you something. And he said, what? You represent my mother's favorite writer. And Dominic said, Sarah Paretsky? And he said, no. He said, Nevada Barr? No. Ian Rankin? No. Peter Robinson? No. He said, all right, Dan, you're going to have to help me out. And he said, David Handler. And Dominic said, David? I mean, David, yes, David. Very fine writer, Edgar winner, very, very solid. I've always been a big fan of his work. David? And it turned out that she loved my book, turned him on to them when he was 14. He has always followed my career, and he liked the Burger Mystery books. He's read every single one of them, but he said, it's not Hoagy. I love Hoagy. I love Lulu. I miss them. tell him I want to hire him to bring him back. And Dominic said he's going to say no. I mean, especially now with the technology being the way it is. I mean, there's no celebrity secrets,
Right.
There are no memoirs. I mean, there's no major memoirs. There's no ghostwriters. I mean, it doesn't translate, Dan. I'll ask him, but I can tell you he's going to say no. So he asked me, and I said no, and I just don't see how it would work, and so that was that. And then about a week later, Dan called back and said, I have another idea. He's a very persistent guy, and a really, really smart guy. He showed The Man Who Would Be F. Scott Fitzgerald, which was considered my best book up until now. I think these two are better, but that's just me. He showed The Man Who Would Be F. Scott Fitzgerald to his 25-year-old assistant, who was not even born when the book came out. And she loved it. She loved all of the celebrity stuff, the pop culture stuff, the fashion stuff, all of the, observations about celebrities and going to lanes and all this stuff. And she said, why doesn't he write them in period? Why doesn't he just go back and make it 1992? There's no internet yet. I spent 15 minutes. As soon as I heard the idea, I went, ooh. So I went on Google, and America Online was like 2004. I remember I had a Mac LC that was hooked up to a printer, but there was no modem. It wasn't hooked up to the phone line. There was no AOL yet. The internet was 97, as I was saying, it was a little bit later. And, so they said, what if you did it then? And I said, that's a very intriguing offer. That's a very intriguing idea. Let me think about it. And he said, well, he's made a 2-book offer already.
That's a great agent.
Yeah. Okay, so basically I'd be absolutely out of my mind to turn this down, right? And he said, yes. They're a really good publisher. They're really motivated. He's a terrific editor, and do this, do it. And so I did, and I worried a little bit about stepping back, writing a voice that I hadn't written in 20 years. That's the thing that people have asked me the most. Was it hard to sit down, at the computer and pick up Hoagy's voice? And actually, it wasn't hard at all because he's me.
Right.
So it's just my voice, What has changed is that while he's the same age, he's still about 40, and of course Lulu never gets older because dogs don't get old in mystery series, and we know why. Because they just don't. We don't go there.
Right.
He's the same age, but I'm not, okay? I've gone through 20 years, losing family, losing friends, triumphs, battle scars, and so when I turned the first draft of The Girl with Kaleidoscope Eyes in, which came out last year, I decided I wanted to write a book about Hoagy's past and use this as an opportunity to find out some things about his wild youth and before he wrote his novel, and also meet the first great love of his life, Reggie Aintree, who was a poet, and his muse. And Merilee, he says, I want you to do this because I want you to go see her. You haven't seen her in a long time, and you've never written anything good since you two broke up. And I think this is really an important thing for you to do. So I explored all of that, and I thought the book turned out like amazingly well in terms of the amount of emotional impact it had. I thought it just, while it's still really funny and Hoagy's Hoagy and Lulu and, you know, there's a really good plot, there's just an extra level of depth and emotional impact that I thought didn't used to be there. And I thought it was because I was, you know, writing about his past, but in actuality, I think it's because I'm just, you know, more mature. I've gone through more. And when I sent the manuscript to Dominic, I came home from, I'll never forget this as long as I live, I came home from a yoga class on a Sunday night. I had sent it to him like on Wednesday. I came home from yoga class on Sunday night, and there was a cell phone voicemail from Dominic Sunday night. And he never called me on the weekend, ever. I mean, he's a very proper British, you know, gentleman. And so I played the voicemail, and his voice was really, really quavering and very emotional. And I really thought the next words that were going to come out of his mouth were grapefruit-sized tumor or something like that. You know, I thought something really, really terrible had happened. And he was calling to tell me he'd just finished the book, and that it was just terrific, just terrific. He just kept saying, I just can't get over how terrific it is. It's so much better, deeper, richer, more poignant than the series was before. I just love it. And he sent it off to Dan, and Dan, same reaction. And I got hugely more respectful reviews, and when the book came out, I got my first starred review from Publishers Weekly. I had never gotten a starred review. And the second book is the new one, The Man Who Couldn't Miss, is really reestablishing the glue that holds the series together, which is the ongoing relationship between Hoagy and Merilee. And in this case, purposely exploring something about her past that we never knew before, something really quite dark and dangerous. But way back when I wrote Men Who Would Be Scott Fitzgerald, oddly enough, I'd almost forgotten this, she bought an 18-acre farm in Lyme, Connecticut. I live in Old Lyme. And she had told him, if you ever want to work on a novel, if you ever get an idea, you are always welcome to use my guest cottage anytime, just say the word. And so at the end of the Girl with Kaleidoscope Eyes, he's kind of like reawakened and is ready to start writing, you know, his next great novel. And that's what he's busy doing in The Man Who Couldn't Miss, except he gets pulled into a crime that involves what she's doing, which is directing, for the first time, she's directing a play at a very fabled, famous summer playhouse out here that's based on a real place called the Ivoryton Playhouse. And it really is the place where Katharine Hepburn had her stage debut, as well as Marlon Brando, Montgomery Clift, Tallulah Bankhead, you name it. And she's directing the theater is collapsing. It needs like $300,000 worth of work. It's sliding off its foundation. The wiring is shot. The plumbing is shot. The dressing rooms flood every time it rains. I mean, it's just a disaster. But everybody in the theater world, you know, in New York, everywhere, cherishes I call it the Sherborne Playhouse. And so she is staging one night only a performance of Noel Coward's great romantic farce, Private Lives, which is a 4-character play. And the other 3, she's going to play one role. The other 3 roles are being played by fellow classmates of hers from the Yale School of Drama, all of whom, like her, are Oscar winners. So it's 4 Oscar winners, one night only, $1,000 a ticket, and everybody's coming. And this is 1993. Katharine Hepburn's still alive. She's coming. Jackie O is still alive. She's coming. Mike Nichols is coming. Elia Kazan is coming. Everybody's coming. And it's going to be, one of the really big events of the summer. And that's the story, except there's a lot of complications along the way, and things don't quite turn out the way we would think they would turn out. But I had a tremendous amount of fun writing it, partly because I just love writing actors, and I love writing about the theater.
Yeah. David, after picking up Hoagy's story after so long, and we know that not much time has passed between the original 8 books and the 2 new ones, but you, as the writer, a lot of times writers are superstitious, or maybe that we just like things to be a certain way, and they help to get us back to the voice, back in the mind of the character. If we have things in our writing space a certain way, after 20 years or so, I would imagine your writing setup is completely different. The tools that we use, some have evolved, some have not.
Yeah, I wrote my first 8 novels on a 1958 Olympia portable typewriter, just like Hoagy did. But the biggest change is I can access. When I first started writing murder mysteries, if I wanted to know how many bullets, Chief's special revolver held, you'd have to either know a cop or right away to the manufacturer or whatever. Now you just go on Google,
Right.
It takes 2 seconds. The amazing thing was, this was so amazing. It's like, within 5 minutes, I found a website that had the front page of every National Enquirer for the week of the year 1992. And, I was immediately, it sounds like a long time ago, but I was actually a working professional then. I remember it
Right.
real well. And it was like Long Island Lolita, Amy Fisher, and Joey Buttafuoco.
Oh, gosh. I remember.
People Magazine's Man of the Year. It was Nick Nolte, who now looks like Santa Claus on crack, but it was just everything. Billboard magazine, hit records, top selling records every week of the year. Top rated television shows of the year, top grossing movies week by week, all year long. And, so all of the information was like right at my fingertips. And I just felt like, I was back there again, and it was really, the transition back to that era was really easy for me. I also use music a lot as cues. That helps to take me back. So it really, it was weirdly, kind of fun.
Yeah.
It was just really fun. I really felt like I've been handed kind of like a bucket list thing. This was,
Well, are you surprised at all that because we do live in an era now where there are no secrets and there are no groundbreaking memoirs and things like that, because everything is played out in real time in front of everybody. Are you surprised?
Right.
Are you surprised that so many people miss that time? And like the 25-year-old editorial assistant you talked about that loved the idea of that and wanted more stories from the period. Are you surprised that people long for that and that these stories resonate so deeply with people?
I think there's a little nostalgia there,
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in high school, I used to sit up and in LA, we had like these local stations that played, movies all night long. I used to sit up and watch Humphrey Bogart and W.C. Fields and all this stuff. I was fascinated by Depression era culture, music, and things like that. All stuff that was from before I was born. I relate to it, but yeah, I think that there is I don't think people are real happy right now. I think there's a lot of chaos and in the world, and things are just changing. The sands are shifting under our feet, and I think that whenever that goes on, people do find comfort in traditional murder mysteries in general, because in murder mysteries there is a resolution. Things turn out the way they're supposed to, and there's a certain comfort in that. They're kind of like comfort food. And the fact that I'm writing kind of like a historical period novel, even though it doesn't feel like a period novel to me because I still have a lot of the same clothes. It's just the years have kind of flown by, but I'm finding it interesting, very interesting. I think they are responding to a lot of. Also the millennials are different than people my age in terms of sampling culture, music from other eras. They really kind of can choose their way through things, and are I'm hearing from a lot of people who never read the original 8, never heard of it, weren't born then, and are looking forward to going back, and happily a few years ago, in a totally unrelated move, a few years ago, MysteriousPress.com got the rights to the ebooks for all of the original 8. So if anybody wants to go back and read the original 8, they're available as ebooks in all formats, and that's a great thing. So because the books are out of print, but again, this is a case where technology is a wonderful thing.
Right. Yeah, it's a precarious place, because you think about the things that technology has done to us, and put us in the place where we do live with no secrets and everything is wide open. But then you have to look at the things that technology does for us, and it
does wonderful things and horrible things.
Exactly, it's just a tool.
We have more information at our fingertips than ever before, yet we're stupider than we ever were before. I mean, it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is crazy. We live in an insane world. One of the joys of being a novelist is that you get to hide in your own world of your own devising, and enjoy yourself, and get a chance, hopefully, to share that with other people, and bring some pleasure into their lives. It's very gratifying. I mean, I really enjoy what I do. I mean, I'm not curing cancer or anything, but it is really gratifying to be able to give people something to enjoy and kind of forget about what's going on around them, and kind of transport them somewhere.
Well,
and not be silly about it,
right?
To actually make it, serious.
Well, and sometimes the role of art is to highlight injustice. Sometimes it's to make us think about things that need to be dealt with, and sometimes it's to bring some joy into the world. And
absolutely,
and one is just as important as the other.
I think so. I actually find I think both of the new book, The Man Who Couldn't Miss and The Girl with Clouded Eyes, I think they're really funny books, but I also think they're really a little sad, a little poignant. So there's just emotional impact there that is something that people really respond to. I think people really like to get involved in other characters' lives and root for them. I'm happy that people still like to read.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were predicting, that books were dead. No one would want to read books anymore, but they are reading in whatever format they're reading them, whether it's on book form or Kindle. But people are reading, and it's some aspect of it is an escape, and some aspect of it, I think, is enlightenment and learning something, about something you didn't know before. So I always try to, give people insights into what make actors tick or what make writers tick, and take them inside places they've never been, take them backstage, take them onto the sound stage, and give them an opportunity to feel as if they're learning something,
Right. David, I know there were 8 books in the original series, and we had this revival with the 2-book series that you mentioned with William Morrow. Will we see any more from the magic trinity of Hoagy, Lulu, and Merilee?
I'm like in the middle of the next one now. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm actually just about at the climax. It's due at the end of the year. It's called The Man in the White Linen Suit. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm really enjoying it.
That's fantastic news.
After that, we'll see. I mean, I'm just, gonna take it one book at a time and see how it goes. But sure. I got really enthusiastic trade reviews for Man Who Couldn't Miss, from, Publishers Weekly and Library Journal, and very enthusiastic, much more respectful than I got 20 years ago. You stick around long enough, you do get taken a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
Not that I am taken seriously, but
well, sometimes you have to give people a chance to appreciate who you are.
Well, it's been really. I can't even begin to tell you what a joy it's been. I dedicated The Man Who Couldn't Miss to Dan, and I said, thank you for giving me an Act 3,
Right.
Because I really feel kind of like rejuvenated by the experience. It's been, I've been walking around with a spring in my step for the last 2 or 3 years.
The dedication is to Gunga Dan Mallory, who gave me an Act 3. That's amazing.
Yeah.
David, the new book, when people are hearing this, the book will be on sale everywhere. If people are
Tuesday.
Comes
out Tuesday.
If people are just discovering your work for the first time, maybe, God forbid, and want to get up to speed with everything that you're doing and maybe your back catalog, where can they find you online to kind of go deep in David Handler world?
Well, I have a website, David Handler Books. I'm also on Facebook, and if you Google me, you'll find a gazillion different lists of my books, but my website is a good place to start. And as is always the case, you never can expect that readers are going to read you from the beginning and read the books in order. So every book can be read, you can start with any book and then go back. I remember I was at a library group once, and I said, does it bother you to, read like the fourth or fifth book in a series and, not quite understand, what you've missed? Do you feel like you should have started with the first book? And this woman said, no, not at all. I said, why? I said, well, if I don't like the book, I don't care. And if I do like the book, it means that I'm really looking forward to going back and reading the book, the series from the beginning.
Right.
So, I've jumped into the middle of, Breaking Bad, I think, in season 4. I didn't watch the first 3 seasons. So, I get that, you can't expect that people are going to, start, from the beginning and work their way along. But, the ebooks are all available, on Amazon or, Barnes and Noble. They're in like all the formats. If anybody wants to go back and read, my Edgar Winter, or the very first book, there, quite a journey. There's a lot happens.
Right.
A lot happens.
Well, I'm gonna link to all of those in the show notes where everyone can go pick up all of the books. This has been a great honor to get to talk to you, David. I'm a huge fan. We're going to send everyone to pick up a copy of The Man Who Couldn't Miss, The Girl with Kaleidoscope Eyes, and we'll just link up the whole series. David, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a thrill.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
He led Jason to a small bistro. The door set tiny bells to chime as they entered. The place shivered with smells. Coffee, hot chocolate, and croissants. "This," he said, extending his arm towards a woman in an apron, "is Jennifer. She makes the best scones and is tragically spoken for." He kissed the woman's hand. She was plump, in her 50s. She had left one curler to dangle at the back of her head this morning. "If it's a tragedy to you, this is the first I've heard of it." She swatted at him with a menu. "Why didn't you speak up 20 years ago, lady killer?" Jason sat. Jennifer put a glass of water in front of him. "And who is this fine gentleman?" "This," said Hedwig, joining, "is my son's great-grandfather's great-great-nephew." "That's a lot of greats. Any great-great-great-whatever of Hedwig is great by me." She giggled at her own wit. "I'll be back for your orders." Hedwig swatted her rear end with a menu as she left. He made small talk about the bistro, the specials, what was good, the Benedict, or not so, the hanger steak. When their orders came, coffee for both, eggs for Jason, a scone for himself, he got down to business. "I met your grandmother about, a year ago. Valerie and I have a mutual interest in old families, particularly old families related to the legend for obvious reasons. Valerie's lived in Tarrytown for years, though her family's up near Boston. Now don't worry, I don't believe all that nonsense about a headless horseman. Valerie's the superstitious one, but the Van Brunts are definitely the family in Irving's story. Hermanus Van Brunt and his wife Agatha were farmers in the village back in 1780 or so. This was during the Revolution. Hermanus grabbed title to lands left by a Tory family who'd been tarred and feathered and shipped back to Britain. Do you know your history? Sure, Tory, loyal to the king. Benjamin Franklin broke with his own son who was a Tory. Smart boy. traitors to the cause, and that was serious business. The British marched straight through here during the war, chased George Washington off Manhattan and out to New Jersey. And after they were kicked out again, a lot of Tories were kicked out with them. Anyway, the Van Brunts took over some farmland north of Tarrytown. They had a son, Abraham, and, of course, their son Abraham married a wealthy heiress, Katrina Van Tassel. Yes, all that is true. It's public record, just like the legend says. My mother left behind quite a few documents written by Abraham Van Brunt, Brom, in Dutch mostly. He was powerful around here. With Katrina's money, he became the biggest stone merchant in the state. He died in 1850. After him, it's Dillon Van Brunt, his son Joseph, the grandson, then Cornelius, then... Sorry, genealogy is not my thing. No? Why was Eliza doing research on the Van Brunts? She wasn't. She was looking into the Cranes. That's what made us such fast friends. I don't get it. We do go back a ways, your family and mine. More coffee? Jennifer appeared at Jason's elbow. Hedwig nodded, and she poured. Still not getting it, said Jason. But he did. Hedwig turned to the waitress, and Jason knew what he would say. My lady, may I present? He raised his coffee cup, proclaiming, the last descendant of Ichabod Crane.